For this week's video, we start on the Foldable House series. It's terrain you can craft up and use for your tabletop games or dioramas. As storage is difficult for me with terrain plus minis, I decided to try crafting a foldable version. There are many ways to do this, but for the next couple of minutes, I'll share my process for it. First, get a good-sized box. Since we're aiming for a small house, I opted for this tea box. I also encourage using recyclables and readily available materials as often as can be. Then, some good old masking tape. Just pick a size that will fit your box, not too thick or too thin. Finally, we have a foam sheet. This is about 0.4mm thick and it's kind of foam used inside shoes. We're going to be using this for making our bricks later on. So the first part of the project is opening up the box, removing any tapes or adhesives that are still on it. Once that's done, you'll want to open up the box all the way and just try to lay it out flat on the table. At this point, it's good to study how the box folds up, which parts you'll need to reinforce, and just really try to visualize what the final piece will be looking like once you're done with it. Now it's time to actually get started on the project. Get a bit of masking tape and put it on all the folding parts of the box. This will usually mean the corners, plus the flaps on the top and the bottom. What you're trying to do is reinforcing these areas which will see a lot of wear and tear from using the piece. Now once you're done with that, try to fold up the box just one more time, just to be sure that you got all the corners and that the box is still actually folding up after you've reinforced them. If there are any bits which are not folding up, just remove the tape and do it again. Now let's make some bricks. There's a nice straight edge here, but that's not what I'm going for. I'm going for the other side, which is uneven, because that's going to give me the texture I want for my project. Use a ruler and the cutter to just remove that part. Now make sure that you keep your hands safe when you do this. Then, take your hobby nippers and just snip the foam to various lengths, as many times as needed. It also helps to have a container ready so the bricks don't disappear in your work table. Take the remaining foam and sketch in a triangle. Once the shape is final, just score the foam with a pencil, making it easier to cut. I've made a triangle shape here that is about 0.5mm high in the middle. I'm keeping the peak low so the piece will stay largely flat when folded. Do a dry fit just to be sure the measurements are right and trim as needed. Then repeat for the other side. Afterwards, take a bit of super glue and lay small pearls on the box top. Attach the roof rests and reposition as needed. Finally, add a piece of foam in between the roof rests on top of the box. This will prevent the roof from being smooshed in storage. This would be the most important part of the build because we want to have that nice brick stone texture, but at the same time make sure the piece actually folds up. So, flatten out the box as we did earlier, and then start by bricking up the flat side folds. Use the pattern of 2 bricks apart on the corners, then 1 brick running across both corners. Use a small pearl of super glue to attach the bricks. Adjust the alignments as needed, and make sure not to glue the bricks together. Make sure to also always test to see if the folding action still works and is not hindered in any way. This is what the finished breakup looks like. Again, test to make sure the folding action still works. Now let's start on the other side. Reform the box and start work on the edge side fold. Again, just use small pearls of super glue for each brick. Apply the bricks in a zipper pattern on each face of the box. Make sure to overlap a little bit over the edge to give the appearance that the bricks are interlocking. Make sure to also always test to see if the folding action still works and is not hindered in any way. This is what the box will look like once the 2 sides are done. Again, test to make sure the folding action still works. Now just repeat the same on the remaining 2 sides, following the same patterns you've already done. And I gotta remind you to keep testing. You have to make sure the piece is foldable at all stages. I decided on a round doorway for the piece, so I cut out 2 strips of foam, one thick and one thin. I took the thick piece and shaped it around this old vitamin C container, as it'll give it a nice, clean circle shape. Trim as needed. Then, put a small pearl of super glue on one end, and then attach the other end to it. Notice though that I'm not putting any glue on the container. Now we'll attach it to the house. Just put a small pearl of super glue first on one spot and attach it. Adjust as needed. Once done, glue up the sides. Afterwards, take the small piece that you cut earlier and place it inside the doorway as you see here. Secure it with super glue. This gives the door a nice texture and depth to it. The finished doorway looks like this. Onto the windows. Take a strip of foam and super glue it onto the box. I like to measure the height of the window against the mini I intend to use it with. In this case, I'm using my kit bashed halfling. Then, take another strip and slowly shape it into the window shape that you want. Now, take note that you can play around with the shapes, but for this build, I'm using what's usually seen on castles. Alright, it's finally time to brick up the building. So the first part we're gonna brick up is the roof rest. And you do this by using super glue just like in the previous parts. Now the important thing to remember here is to make sure that the flap will still open after you're done bricking up the roof rest. Now let's brick up the body. Instead of using super glue, we're now going to be using PVA glue. This will allow us time to adjust the bricks as we put them in one by one onto the surface. Just use the bricked up sides as a guide. If you also need inspiration as to how the brick should be put in, just observe your neighborhood and look for buildings that have bricks. This is what the stone house looks like after all that effort. Putting in that extra bit of effort really gives you a great texture. Now let's see the magic happen. And that's how I make foldable terrain. Thank you for watching, and do like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Now do join me next week as well when I do the roof and the door parts in part 2 of foldable terrain.